Welcome to toy-polloi.
Hello and welcome to another video from toy-polloi, and in today's video we're going to be building another of these little mini dioramas. If you've watched my channel recently, you'll have seen that I've built 3 separate mini dioramas. I started off building a custom display for my Han Solo in carbonite. That turned out really nice. Once I'd finished that one, I had an idea that I wanted to do exactly the same for the Disney Black Hole toy line, because that's a toy line that doesn't have any sort of display pieces with it. So I created this double-decker display, and then once I finished that one, I thought it would be quite nice to do something for the Star Trek the Motion Picture toys from Mego, because that's another underrated toy line. And then once I'd finished that gave me an idea for something else, another toy line that I don't have any way of displaying, and that is the Kenner Indiana Jones figures. So that's what we're going to be working on today. We're going to take some ideas from all of these dioramas and we're going to make a new mini display for these action figures. So what is the plan? Well, as you can see, I have built 3 separate dioramas for various toy lines, and each one is constructed in roughly the same way. It always starts out with 1mm thick styrene sheet, and then you construct from there. This original one, which was the one that I started with, is the sort of Han and carbonite block diorama. This one was quite complicated because I wanted to have lots of lights in it. We've got lights at the bottom, we've got a light at the top, and then a little light there on the sort of computer console. And it was a fairly complicated build. There's lots going on behind. If I turn it around, you can see we've got lots of wiring and stuff and a battery hidden there. Magnets as well to hold the carbonite block in place. It turned into a really nice display piece, but it's quite a complicated build. The next one I did was the diorama for the Disney's Black Hole. This was much simpler, again built out of 1mm styrene sheet. There's not a lot going on with this one. It's flat panels and a graphic in the background which is just designed in Photoshop. That one works really well and is a very quick thing to put together. I then made this one, which is a sort of combination of the two. So this has some electronics in it because we have some lights that you can see there and also on the consoles, but otherwise the basic thing is just made out of more 1mm thick styrene sheet. And while I was making this one, I had an idea that I could do a sort of another version using this exact same base, because I thought this base was pretty good. It's a 2-level base with some steps, and I'm thinking that I'd build something similar to this for the Indiana Jones one, something that the figures can stand on. But for the backdrop, I'm actually going to make something in Photoshop. So I want to make a cardboard backdrop that we can slot in. So we need to design something that enables us to insert a piece of cardboard in the back, and then we can change the background as well. If we make the base a fairly sort of universal colour, we can have different backdrops depending on what figures we want to display. So that is going to be the plan today. I'm going to start by remaking this piece just out of some 1mm styrene sheet. Then we'll make some modifications to it and see what we can do for the back. So I have gathered all the pieces that I need to make the base of this, and I'm really just going to be copying what I built here with a few sort of minor modifications. It's a really nice size, this one, so it's 24 centimeters wide. I think that is about the right width. The depth of it I'm going to change slightly. Each of these platforms is 5 centimeters deep, so I'm actually going to make those slightly deeper just because we don't have this sort of background area. It's going to be a flat surface, so I'm going to make those 6 centimeters deep just so it's a little bit deeper, but I'm going to keep the steps the same sort of distance apart because I think those work. I'm going to keep the height the same. This is all made out of 1mm thick styrene sheet, so I've got 2 A4 pieces of this styrene, which will be more than enough. I also have my bag of offcuts, which will be useful because I can make the stairs out of those pieces. It's all going to be stuck together using EMA plastic weld, so really I've just got to get sort of drawing and cutting. I did draw up plans originally for this background, but I didn't follow them particularly closely. I sort of made stuff up as I go along, which tends to be how I like to work, so I'm just going to do the same, roughly measuring this and then making the bits up as I go. But I know the final thing is going to be 24 centimeters wide. That's the only thing that I'm really sort of concerned about. Everything else we can just sort of modify as we go. So let's get building. And here we go, this is the base remade. So I've essentially, as I say, copied what I did for the Enterprise deck. I've made it a little bit deeper, so these are 6 centimetres. And then on the back is where the interesting thing happens, because I want to put a sheet of cardboard. So what I've done is I've just put another piece of styrene, which is about 1 millimetre away from the back plate. And there's a little gap there now, which I'm hoping a piece of cardboard will sit into. This is a little bit on the floppy side. It may be that I need to reinforce this. You can see that I can bend it quite a lot, but I'm hoping that there's enough sort of strength there that it will hold up a sheet of cardboard. So we can actually give that a test now. I've just got myself a piece of cardboard. This is just some cardboard that came in packaging. It just happens to be really nice quality cardboard. So what I've done is I've cut it to the same width of this, minus 2 millimetres, because obviously we have 1 millimetre of styrene either side. So this is 23.8 centimetres wide, and then I've done an arbitrary height on it, which at the moment I've done as 15 centimetres, because it sort of feels about the right height. If we put a figure there, we're losing 1.5 centimetres at the bottom where we've got this step, and then it gives us a nice sort of height above the figure. So let's try this in the gap and see if it works. So that should just slot in there. Does it stay upright? It does. That's not too bad. It's a bit floppy. Maybe I have to add something in there. It needs something, I think, in the middle possibly. If I push in the middle, you can see that makes it go more upright. But it's actually not too bad. And if we put a figure on here, let's get Indy on here. Does that feel about the right height? You know what? I think it does. If I rearrange my camera so it's a bit lower, you'll be able to see what this looks like. But I think that is not looking too bad. There you go, my camera's lower and you can see that, yeah, that 15 centimetres I think is about the right height. We lose 1.5 centimetres at the bottom because that's what slots in the little gap there. So we've actually got 13.5 centimetres above the floor line. I think that is about right. So I'm going to do a little bit more tidying up on this. Some of the edges need a little bit more tidying, and I'll see if I can put something in the back to just add a bit of strength there to stop this card being so floppy. It's not too bad. Obviously this is going to be on display, you know, next to a wall or something, so that's not really going to be much of an issue, but it would be nice if that was a little bit more sort of firmly held in place. So a few more modifications, then I'm going to give the base a paint, and I think the paint will be the same sort of sandy colour that I used on the Hannon Carbonite diorama, and I am going to give it a dirty wash as well, because you know, the Indiana Jones universe is a fairly rough and red universe, so a bit of dirt and grime over it will look pretty nice. So yeah, a few more modifications and then we'll get this painted up. Then we can start worrying about the artwork on the back plate. Okay, I did just make a few more modifications. As I said, I've tidied up all of the edges just because they were a little bit rough. And on this back section, originally I just had this piece of styrene just stuck at either end. But what I've done is I've actually added a very thin strip. So this is basically a 1mm strip of styrene across the bottom. So it's now more of a pocket than a sort of a flap, which means there's a little bit more sort of strength to it. The bottom is held in place all the way along, which means when I put the cardboard in, there's just more sort of strength there to hold it. But I've also found a better piece of cardboard. This cardboard, although really nice, is just a little bit on the thin side. So I found this piece of cardboard. Basically, when you buy printer paper or the sort of sticky backed printer paper, it always comes with a piece of cardboard in there just to keep the paper flat and stop it from being bent. And that is exactly what this is. It's just a piece of that cardboard. So this is a little bit thicker. It's actually sort of nicer quality card, really. And if I slot that into the gap, like so, that is now pretty firmly held in place. So a combination of some modifications on the back there and some better quality card, and I think that is good to go. So I'm now going to take this out into my garage and give it a couple of coats of paint. I have a plastic primer spray which I'll put on first, and then I have this sort of sandy desert colour which I'll spray over the top of that, and then we can apply some dirty washes as well, just to add a little bit of grime to it. So let's get all the paint applied. And here we go, here is the finished base. So as you can see, I put a few coats of paint underneath it, a plastic primer. I then had a beige spray paint that I sprayed on, and on top of that I've added the sandy spray paint, and that gave it a fairly nice sort of mottled finish. And on top of that I've done a fairly rough sort of dirty wash just to bring out some of the edges. I don't want to go too far with this because this really is just going to be the floor. The important bit is actually the backdrop and the figures sitting on top of it. So I just want to knock this back a bit so it doesn't stand out. I think that's not looking too bad. So now we've got to go into Photoshop and design the back plates. I have a couple of rough ideas of what I want to do, and I've started sort of messing about with a few ideas in Photoshop as well. So let's just work on those, see what I can come up with. These took about an hour each just because I was sort of messing about and making up ideas as I went along, finding images that I could cut and paste together, and I'm actually really happy with how they've turned out. So this one is sort of the Cairo streets, and I think that's looking pretty good. There's enough detail in there, little sort of markings on the wall, because really you don't want it again to be too complicated because we're just going to be putting figures in front of it. But I think that is looking pretty good, and if I bring in an indie figure you can see the scale of it is pretty close as well. Then I have done one which looks a little bit more like the map room, I suppose. So we've got some hieroglyphs and some sort of brick textures and all sorts in the background. I think that again is going to work really quite well. It's a little bit more complicated than the other one, but yeah, with some figures in front of it, it's going to look really pretty nice. So we're going to mount these now onto this piece of white card. These I have printed out onto some sticky backed printer paper just because I happen to have quite a lot of it. You could just print this out onto normal paper and then apply a glue to the back of it, but as I had the paper already, it was the easy option. I've already cut them to size, so I've just got to peel off the backing and stick them onto this card, and then we'll take a look at the finished thing.
toy-polloi.
And so here we go. Here is the finished little mini diorama. I've put the Cairo streets background up there first, and as you can see, it just makes such a difference to how these figures look. The base, as I say, is fairly simple. It's just got a basic paint application to it. Really, all of the detail that's going on is in the background, and I just think this works so well, and it's such a universal piece. I'm sort of thinking that I maybe will come back to this and I'll make myself another version that I can then display maybe some Star Wars figures on or something like that, because it's very easy to make the base. With a few little modifications, it could certainly look more Star Warsy. I'd maybe make the steps a bit longer and paint it in a dark black or a gloss black or something like that. But for now, it's really working well with these Indiana Jones figures. So let's swap that background over and I'll show you what it looks like with the sort of map room version of the graphics in place. It's amazing what a difference just changing the background has. As you can see, this now looks like a completely different scene, whereas we know the floor is exactly the same. All I've done is turned around the artwork that I created for the back, and we've now essentially got a different looking diorama. I think it is working really well. It's exactly what I was hoping would happen when I sort of built this, that I'd be able to swap out those back plates, and it may be that I need to create a few more of these background artworks, because as we know, there are plenty of these Indiana Jones figures, certainly with the new retro collection ones around. So it's working really very well. If you want to have a go at making your own version of this, I'm going to put these files available on toy-polloi.com, and all you've got to do is make yourself a base. Really, you can make it however you want. This one is fairly simple, but you could go a bit more complicated. But all you need to do at the back is leave a space that you can insert a piece of cardboard. And if you haven't checked out some of my other diorama videos, I will put a link to those in the description and also at the end of this video, so do please go and watch those. If you've enjoyed this video, then make sure to hit the subscribe button and tap the bell to be notified each time I upload a new video. And if you've really enjoyed it and want to help me out here at toy-polloi, then why not think about becoming a Patreon of the channel. You get early access to all of my restoration videos and also access to an exclusive video series called On the Cutting Mat. So have a think about that, and thanks for watching.
Thanks for watching Toy-polloi. Subscribe for more great videos.